Hey everybody, Ray here. Today I'm going to show you how I installed some sliding drawers into a kitchen cabinet. It really makes them much more efficient and much easier to use. In my case, I had another specific reason for doing it because without the sliders, I could get a headache. You'll understand that in just a minute. When we redesigned our kitchen, we wanted to have a large drawer for our pots and pans. So we have one double wide cabinet that allows us big slide out drawers for our pots and pans. It really works well. We also have another tall cabinet to the left. It's tall and thin, but it's where we keep our pizza peel, our cutting boards and things of that nature. But when I put those in, what that did was create a void in the back side of the cabinet, which really didn't make sense. You want to utilize all that space that you can. So what we did was we just put a door on the other side of the cabinet. Now there's a couple of problems here. That door on the other side of the cabinet, you have to reach under a ledge that's 9 inches wide coming off across the top of that countertop to reach back in there. And I can't tell you how many times I've bumped my head either going in or coming out of that cabinet. It hurts. The other thing is that I tend to store my mixer down there. So as I was reaching in, bending way over to reach in and come back out with that mixer, which is kind of heavy, it's really not very nice to the back. So those are the specific reasons why I wanted to put that sliding drawer in there. Now, let me show you how I did it. I measured the inside of the cabinet to get an idea of what size drawer I might have. From wall to wall on the inside, it's 21 inches. The depth from the faceplate to the back wall is 23 inches. That's a really important measurement because you want your sliders to be 1 inch smaller than that depth. So I'm going to order 22-inch sliders. The face frame protrudes about 1/4 of an inch on the left side and about 3/4 of an inch on the right side. So I'll have to make this flush with some board to mount my slider to bring this out 3/4 of an inch. This side here, I may or may not have to mount something. We'll see. When I put the sliders in, I'll be able to tell if it can handle that 1/4 of an inch space right there. And if I can, I won't put another spacer in there. So as I mentioned, the trim piece here juts out roughly 3/4 of an inch from the inside of the cabinet. So I want to make that flush before I can put my drawer slide on. I found that a 1x3 should work perfectly because it's just about the right depth. So if I put that in there like that, you can see that I cut it just shy of the 23 inches that I needed to fit in here just to make sure it would fit. And then if you look right here, you can see that this is very flush against the edge of this. So that should work just perfectly. I bought a 4-foot piece of 1x2. It cost me like $1.92 or something like that, because I'll need one for this drawer and then I'll need one for this drawer up here. Most of these extension sliders that you can buy separate the same way. Pull out to the full extension of it. And then if you look on this side right here, there's this little pull down thing. So you just pull that, and then you might have to tug it at the end, but that outside piece will come off. This outside piece is what will attach to the drawer. Now you can flip it back over and you can start to figure out where you want to mount your slider on your piece of shim board here. Now I've got the front of the slider all the way up to the front of my board. And I've got it such that this edge of it is hanging out a little bit fat of the shim here, if you will. It's dropped down a little bit this way. And that's because when I level this, I want to level it to the slider, not necessarily to the board. And then what I'm going to do is just mark where I'm going to put my smaller holes here. And this is just a nail punch. You could use whatever you wanted. Use a real nail if you wanted to. And because I have to mount this to my wall through this 1x3 here. These screws that they provided are they're too short. So I will use these screws to mount my slider to my shim board, and then I'm going to use 1 1/4 inch screws to go through into the side of the cabinet. So I will continue to mark where I want to put my small screws, and if you can see when I slide that out, it'll expose some of these areas to put the small screws in. So I've got 2 in the back, 1 in the middle, and then 1 up in the front here. So I've marked where I wanted my small screws, 2 here, 1 here. I'm going to put another one in here. I've already put that one in and put the one in the middle. I'm going to put this last one in the back. Now, that holds the slider to my shim board here. And that's plenty sturdy. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a hole here. I already put a hole there. That's going to be for my longer screw. I'm going to put a hole here, and then I'm going to put another one up front. So I'll drill all those holes. So when I mount this backing board to the side of the cabinet with these screws, I'll also be putting more screws in this to hold it. This is the right side of the cabinet. I shimmed it up 1/4 inch so it could clear the faceplate in the front. Then I mounted the screws in the holes that I had pre-drilled out in the garage. Once this is mounted, I will repeat the same process with the left side of the cabinet. Now it's time to get our shelf cut down so it'll fit between our sliders that we've put in. If I measured between the 2 shims that I put on each side, one on the left, one on the right, I come up with 21 inches. I have to allow a 1/2 inch on each side now because I'm going to add those sliders. So that means that I've got a total of 1 inch that I have to take off. So if I've got 21 inches, that means that this shelf here has to be 20 inches when I account for that inch. Now I'm going to use a table saw to do that. You could use a circular saw, for that matter you could even use a hand saw. Just make sure that you orient your board correctly so you're cutting off the right edge, and make sure that you keep your line nice and straight so it's going to glide easily in and out after you mount it. I've positioned my slider so the outside edge is even with the outside edge of the board. And then, in the spots where the screws go, I can mark where I want to drill my holes for the screws. Now, it calls for 2 screws in the instructions. I'm going to use 3 because the stuff that I'm going to put on here is pretty heavy. Now these hinges are rated for 100 pounds, and I just don't think 2 small screws is quite enough. So I'm going to be doing 3 screws. We drilled our pilot holes, put our screws in, everything is nice and tight. It's time to go in and see how we did. So I'd have to say, all in all, we're pretty happy with this fit. And it seems to work just fine. So the size of this is great. Now, one thing I want to fess up to here is if I'd have paid attention to my drawing, I'd have remembered that my opening from side to side of the cabinet was 21 inches. And when I added those shims inside, that brought it down to 20 inches. So this actually should have been 19 inches. So when I walked in, I looked at my graph there and I thought, oh, you know, I think I did this wrong. Placed it down there. It actually was a little bit too wide. Wasn't a big deal. I took the side pieces off, took it back out there, cut off that extra inch, and now it works great. So just take your time, pay attention to the numbers. Don't be a dummy like me. Okay, here's your trick. Now this would even work better if you didn't have to have a shim to make up the difference between your face plate and the side of your cabinet. But it'll work either way. So these cabinets have all these peg holes where you can set your shelf where you want it. You want to make sure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You want to make sure that you're exactly in the same hole. Now I know when I put my shelf rack in there, then it's going to be perfectly level. So I can set that in there like that. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take a couple of pieces of masking tape. I'm just going to put some tape on this to temporarily hold it so it doesn't fall off those little shelf pegs. All right, so we will find where our screws need to go here. I know I've got one in the front. Just need to find the hole that I drilled through. It's right there. I'm going to put my screw in there that's going to screw this to the side of my cabinet. And I'm just going to start it such that it will leave a hole. Find my middle hole, get it started, and I'm using 1 5/8 inch screws here. And then I can do my back hole. Now what I will do is I will remove these screws. And those screws would have left little holes where I need to mount my slider. So once you've got your little holes in there that you made with your screws, you just take this back off, remove the pegs, and put it back up, mounting those screws exactly in those holes that you left before. It works great. And it's going to make sure that this is nice and level this way, and it's going to be level this way, because those pegs on each side of this are lined up precisely across from each other. Now what I want to do is just add a little lip to the front and the back of the shelf. And what I did was, I've got about a 1 by 1 piece of oak here. I had some scrap oak and I thought it would look good. So I'm just going to clamp this on here. And then I'll flip it over. I'll drill a couple of starter holes. Okay, let me get my driver and we'll just put a couple of screws in there. Beautiful. It's not going to take much to hold that. 1 5/8 just almost came out of the end. I could have used a 1 1/4 probably. And I will do that when I put the other ones on. Okay, so that gives me a little lip. And in the front, it'll allow me something to pull this out with. And then in the back, it'll just keep things from falling off. So I'm going to put the rest of those on these drawers, and then we'll put them back in. Well, we're all finished, and I have to tell you, I'm pretty darn happy with the way this turned out. If you remember before, I had to bend way over to get under there to get that heavy mixer out. Now, I can simply just reach down, pull out my drawer. The mixer is right there for me to lift off, right up there. No danger of hitting my head anymore. I like that. The other drawer keeps some other implements on it, and they're easier to get out too. So at the end of the day, we're pretty darn pleased. I hope you liked this project. If you did, don't forget, leave me that thumbs up, and you might want to subscribe for more projects like this. And I'll see you on the next video.